All right, let's see. Let's start the streaming to YouTube. Excellent connection, it says. Okay.
So we just basically sharing the PowerPoint and going just through it slide by slide like any presentation.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So here, that's the YouTube link. So I want to see what happens when I go to practice. So we can go into oh, I had the ability to go to a practice session. Now I don't have the ability to go to a practice session. It's because I'm streaming. Whatever. I just want to see what it looks like when I share my screen. Looks fine to me. All right, so if I go to Teams here, bring up that presentation. Right. Actually, let's bring this over here. All right, come back. There you go. All right, share my screen.
So not hearing done.
This will work much better actually if I share the screen I'm looking at. 1 second, because then it doesn't look like I'm like looking off into space or something.
Strategic placing of the content so you can read and look like you're providing eye contact.
Yeah, exactly. All right, there we go. And I'll immerse myself in the content.
Yes, you can do that in Teams as well.
Yeah, I think you have multiple options in Teams and in WebEx. It's just the one. Okay, so when I do that on YouTube, it just puts our two little thumbnails up at the top and then the content below. That's fine.
So that's okay. Client. That's a client function, not a that's an embedded in the video.
Yeah, WebEx is taking all of this and sending a specific layout stream to YouTube. It's all built into the app. Okay, so yeah, of course we'll do our introduction here. Welcome everybody to our live session on multi-factor authentication. This is sort of our way of making our organizations more secure, blah, 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 la, la, la. We'll talk our usual IT spiel, welcome them with open arms. And then I guess before we actually get too far into this, we really should touch on, and maybe it's better if I'm using presenter mode or something, which still shows this Teams thing on the side. It's not much different. I guess I could load this full screen if I wanted to, but
probably have more flexibility if you just is WebEx like Teams where it natively knows you're doing a PowerPoint and yeah, if you open it,
let's do it here.
So now if you present in Teams, it natively knows. That's probably just because Microsoft just
Microsoft for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. We'll just do this.
Microsoft, you get presenter view and your slide view. You get all that stuff in Teams when you present.
Yeah, I guess if I was using PowerPoint locally, it might do that too. But
well, there you're full screen now.
The web. There we go. All right, so I guess before we get too into it, I guess we should maybe discuss what multi-factor authentication actually is. And to save us all a lot of time, we're just going to refer to multi-factor authentication as MFA from here on out. We don't want to stretch this for too much longer because we're saying multi-factor authentication every time. And I guess there's a document that shows you an introduction to what this all is, but if you haven't had a chance to read this, then this presentation is going to be a wealth of information. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit redundant, but we'll sprinkle in some extra little morsels of information along the way for those of you who already know what multi-factor authentication is. And then at this point, I guess we could just, yeah, I guess we'll just do this section by section. I can do the intro if you want, and then when we get to another section slide, you can take over. Just let me know how you feel about it.
I guess we got
There's
one,
like 3 sections, maybe 3 or 4.
2, 3, 5, I guess.
5 sections. Okay.
The intro and then 4 sections, I guess.
Okay.
After the intro, the first section is the longest. It's basically breaking down how the approach is. So that's the data rich stuff, and then security keys. I guess there's 2 slides. What ifs, another 3, and when do we get access is 1. So if we alternate, how does that work out? 1, then long, short, longish, short. Okay.
It doesn't really matter. Yeah, like I can do the first 2. It doesn't really matter. And then you can I can do first 2, you could do the 3 and 4, and I can do the last one.
Yeah.
Whatever works. It might work with flow a little bit easier that way too. Doesn't really matter. We'll just go through this, and sometimes it's just really how you feel about the content. If you don't feel like you can, speak to it, or you don't feel like whatever, just we'll just pick the stuff that we're comfortable with in doing, I guess.
So is your approach to presenting more paraphrasing, or are you going to just read through it verbatim?
Oh, I always paraphrase. I never read what's on the slide. I always reference.
Me too.
So it's, yeah, and that's really the way it is. So really the way it should be, I should state. You should never just read off your slides, because then what's the point? They can just send on the slide deck. They can read the slide deck, right?
Yeah.
So I guess let's first of all do an overview of what MFA is. And basically, MFA, or a multi-factor, is just providing something in addition to a password or something similar. And later on in the presentation, we're going to see that isn't necessarily a password. It can be something else. It gets referred to as a PIN, but it's really in addition to something else, some other means of identifying yourself. In the past, you may have seen this referred to as 2FA, and 2FA just means second factor. And after a period of time, they're like sort of like English as a second language. They realized, you could have more than one factor, one additional factor. So they just kind of made it more generic and said multi-factor. So just kind of prepares them for the future. And then you may have already been exposed to multi-factor already in some of the services that you access. So those things could be, it asks you to send or enter in a code that they send to you via text message, or same thing to your email address. You kind of interact with this all the time if you're using a phone that uses your fingerprint or a face scan of some sort, so a Touch ID or Face ID or whatever on your phone that really is using your biometrics to ensure that you are who you say you are. And that's a very secure way of doing things. And looking at some more advanced and probably more secure means of ensuring you are who you say you are, you have time-based one-time passwords, or TOTPs, that authentication apps or dedicated authenticator apps use to ensure that the code that you enter expires after a specific period of time. Usually it's around 30 seconds. So you have a shorter period of time to actually grab that code, enter it before it expires. So it's a bit more secure in that way. And then these things called hardware keys. So we're gonna talk about those more in a little bit, but basically they're like a key that you can plug into your computer or your device, or you can hold it close and it can do some wireless or tap to authenticate type of deal, where it uses stuff on device securely stored to ensure that that you are who you say you are. So that's an introduction or an overview. Let's get more into the meat of it. At this point, I might do actually I might do a poll. So 1 second, I have a poll built, but I have to find where the rest of my WebEx stuff is here. 1 second. You might see this. All right. Because I already built those in Slido. So before we move forward, we're going to ask you which services you may have encountered in the past, or have you used some form of additional proof when logging into an online service? Now, do you actually see that pop into your WebEx?
It's
Hold on
loading.
a second. Okay. Yeah, first time participant with Slido on the line here. It's just going to take a little bit to load for him.
Is it install some kind of client behind or something?
I think it downloads the app and then it
I see.
signs in.
It's got some webhooks needs to install. Still loading, man. Come on. Come on.
So yeah, if it's going to take that long, I might do a little a little preamble while I'm loading up the poll.
Yeah. Yeah, it's taking longer than I thought it would.
It says my stream's current bit rate is lower than recommended. Ooh, man, really taxing the benefits here.
Could not join Slido. Continue to Slido. Got to authenticate first. Oh, there we go. Okay, why did it? Oh, no, I closed the window. Shoot, how do you get it back? There we
Here,
go.
let me
I got it.
I started again. Oh, okay, all right.
Polls, there we go. All right. I had to pop it out for it to actually try to load it, which is weird.
It should pop out automatically, but yeah, good to know. We'll start with a simple one and then get the feedback. So when you answer, you should get the results.
Yep.
You see it live in front of you. Okay. And then based on the number of participants, we'll kind of gauge that. It should say how many votes I have, and then give them a little time. So, oh, look, we have 100% of our participants that have used some sort of additional proof on logging into online services. This is profound. All right, to dive into it more, let's move into the next poll, which is which types of additional authentication have you used before? So this could be something like text messaging, email, biometrics. I guess if you use a phone, that'll apply to you. A recent phone, probably within the last 5 years. Holy cow, 100%. Everyone's used every type of authentication, additional factor of authentication. Well, that is great to hear. Yeah, this will all be kind of old to you guys, but hopefully we can keep you engaged. We have one additional poll during the rest of this presentation that you will be able to chime in on. All right, so I'll deactivate that poll. And the last poll that we're going to actually distribute is, do you access college services via personal mobile device? That'll kind of gauge how many people are going to have to be using Microsoft Authenticator. So that's why it's in there. All right, so now that we kind of know what MFA is from a high level. Yeah, go ahead, Cory. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Now that we know what MFA is from a high level, let's move into sort of how we are approaching MFA. So as you've seen there are a few options there, 5 that we've listed. There's probably a few in addition to that as well. But how are we approaching MFA? We don't have infinite amounts of money. We have to accommodate certain needs within our organizations. So some of those options are not available to us or are limited. So we have to maybe take a step back and see how we want to approach this to make it work for everybody. So how we are approaching this, and these are our goals. So the first goal is we want to provide a solution that is not susceptible to attack. So we don't want to choose an MFA or a second or multi-factor option that's going to be hacked within the next week or month or year, or maybe has already. So we want to make sure that we're choosing a solution that's going to provide us with an additional point of security well into the future. The next piece is we want to choose a method of authentication that's not going to slow down your login process. Although we can't promise you that it will slow you down 0%, we want to make sure that we're not slowing you down just a tremendous amount of time. So picking a solution that's quick while still keeping you secure is also part of our goals here. Another piece here is that we do not want to require you to use a personal device to authenticate to college services. I think that would just kind of do you guys a disservice, where your contingent employment with us and doing the work that we require for you to do requires for you to then provide us with a personal device. We want to avoid that as much as possible. So we got to find a solution that doesn't require some sort of personal investment of some sort. So got to find a solution that works in that way too. And then finally, we've got to find a method of authentication that's standard to all staff. This is basically to ensure not only fairness, but also sanity in IT. We don't want to have all these different methods of second or multi-factor authentication. And then we have to support all of these different scenarios where, oh, I plugged in this weird thing and we had never heard of it before. We want to make it standard, so it's easier for us to support you. This isn't necessarily limited to one or maybe just a handful of standardized solutions that allow us to support you better and then standardize so that we can accommodate you better because it's all standard as well. So let's first of all talk about security. So as we mentioned, there's a number of ways that we can provide multi-factor authentication. Not all of them are created equal. And it might be easy to see at first glance which ones are secure and which ones are not so much. With the orange columns here, we have SMS and email. So SMS, hackers can spoof your SIM card. I know it's hard to believe, but they can, or create a man-in-the-middle attack where your phone is actually not connecting to a cell tower. It's connecting with something in between and they're intercepting things. So those are things that SMS specifically is susceptible to. And then also due to some convenience, and I know those people with Apple devices using iMessage, those codes could arrive on multiple devices. So it could arrive on your iPad, your phone, your Mac, all of those things. And there could be like numerous devices that this code arrives on. If someone were to steal one of those, they'd get that code. And if they were quick enough, they'd be able to actually intercept and use that as your second factor. Email is sort of similar in SMS in its insecurity, but in a different way. So email usually has a password assigned to it because it's another account or a service that you provide your account credentials to. If you're using the same password or a weak one or something similar, you've pretty much defeated the whole purpose of that email as a second factor. They basically, if they know your password already, they have the password to your email. Your second factor is actually now defeated because the password's the same or very similar. Biometrics are probably some of the most secure just because it's using an identity. Depending on how it's implemented, not all of them are created equal, but most are pretty secure. Very hard to spoof. And usually, and they call this something like the secure enclave or some other similar way of mentioning it, but it's usually stored on device in a very secure location, hardened for security within that device. Authenticator or authentication application. I think Microsoft calls it authenticator specifically, but generally these are apps that are running on a separate device. Sometimes, in some cases, they can run on the same device you're trying to authenticate, but they also then require an additional piece to ensure you are who you say you are. But in fact, running on a separate device kind of serves that purpose as a second means of identification. And these are really to gather that time-based one-time passwords for you to grab. You pull it off of there and you type it in, and that's done on device versus some of these more insecure ways of SMS and email.
Yeah.
And then
Microsoft
finally, we have
actually. Oh, sorry. I was going to say Microsoft's actually improved upon that on-device authentication in the last few builds of their Authenticator app. They've actually required a 2-digit code for a lot of authentications just to get that extra piece. It's not just like a thumbprint or a fingerprint. It actually requires you to type in a 2-digit code just so that it has an extra layer of
right. Yeah. Use that in passwordless, I believe, right?
Yeah.
You're using passwordless. Yeah. So basically, they give you, I think it's 3 numbers, and they show you one on there, and you type in one. Yeah. Yeah, I think I saw that when I was authenticating. I was like, that's a pretty cool piece because not only is it doing Face ID, depending on your phone or a PIN or a thumbprint, you also need that 2-digit code to authenticate. So it's like triple factor, quadruple factor authentication. Well, I guess it's triple because you're not using a password in passwordless. And then finally, security keys. So security keys are basically these USB keys. Usually they look like USB keys. And they're basically security hardened and they're focused on that. So basically they're designed around security first. The other piece is they're also pretty rugged. So they can be put through the ringer a bit more, definitely more than a smartphone can be before they actually fail. So they're a pretty secure and rugged device. And as well, they're kind of anonymous as long as you don't mark them up and put your identifiable information on it. Please don't do that. If you lose it, the sort of the malicious actor has no way of actually knowing who this key belongs to. So first of all, they have to know what the PIN is. And second of all, they have to know what the username is. So this device is basically useless. If you wanted to hack them and try pins over and over again, they have a pin limit, usually around 8, where once 8 invalid pin attempts are tried, the thing wipes itself. So it becomes virtually useless in every way. I guess they could use it as their own multi-factor device after that, but the cost of it isn't really, we're not out that much money in that case. So they're pretty secure thing.
One thing you don't want to do is, like my wife likes to do, every key she doesn't know what it is, she'll take a key tag, write exactly what it is, and then attach the key tag to the key. Don't do that with your security key, because someone gets that, they'll know exactly what it's for and how to get to where they need to go to try and use it. So
for sure,
it should remain untouched. It should look like an
remain unmarked.
Yes,
exactly. And the fact is that, okay, let's say the scenario comes up where you're at multiple employers and they all use, for some reason, they all use the same key we use. In fact, that UB key or that security key, I should keep it generic, can act as an authenticator for multiple services. So you could actually, if you wanted to, attach both keys. If you're required to have both, it might be a good idea as backups. They can both be assigned to both institutions, and so there's no real way of mixing them up. So they have all of the authentication for all the services you use. So don't feel that that's not a possibility. You can definitely do that.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if you want to touch on, technically it could be used for personal use. Maybe we want to avoid that.
It could be like I'm open to that, using as personal use. In fact, I'm open to not actually grabbing the key back if they leave the organization, because you just they just keep it with them. It might be easier just to leave them be. It's different with door fobs for us, but
if they wanted to use it for their MFA for their Royal Bank account, can they do that?
I believe so.
I don't see why not. Because if they use their personal Google account, their personal whatever, Yahoo, whatever.
Yeah. Go to town, really. It's just there's more.
You're better off. Yeah.
We make them all more secure by providing with them, and maybe we sell that as sort of like not only organizational security, but also improves your personal security. And it's on us. Like we gave this to you, and go out and be more secure. So touching on our next goal is convenience. We want to make this as convenient as possible for you, or else this will kind of be seen as a hindrance versus more security, but also a hindrance. So you kind of be unhappy with it all. So we want to make sure that we provide you with a solution that's convenient as well. So as mentioned there, maybe I'll just stick to the sentence. Making it harder to log in will just drive people to avoid MFA. Some methods actually make it more convenient. So SMS and email, they're not secure, and they're also not so convenient, because you have to get the text message, you look at it, you have to type in that 6-digit code. Sometimes you can copy and then paste it on your other device, but it's those extra steps, and especially you have to type it. It's very inconvenient. Email is even less convenient in the sense that you have to go and log into that email account, or if you have to go on your phone, it's very similar to SMS, but it still requires that typing. Biometrics by far the most convenient, because basically you're touching something or looking at something and boom, it's done. And that's definitely the most convenient way. It's fast, reads it, away you go. Authenticator apps similar to SMS and email, except that it depends on what kind of device you're on. So it's similar to SMS in the sense that you have to go and look at that code, type it in. But if you're running it on mobile, and I guess you could say the same thing for SMS, basically you can just copy and paste that code right on your mobile device from your Authenticator app. It just does a better job in some cases of listing itself right there in the code field and fills it in a little bit easier for you. Security keys, sort of in the same realm as Authenticator, in the sense that you don't have to go and find a code and type it in. You basically just have to plug it in. If it's already plugged in, all you have to do is touch it, and then it requires a PIN that you know. So it's not as fast as biometric by far, but it is definitely more convenient than typing in a 6-digit code. You're already typing in a PIN, and basically it just requires a touch. So it's not as convenient as biometric, but it's not as inconvenient as those SMS and email services. So it's kind of in the middle there. And then availability. So as we mentioned, we don't want you to use your personal devices if at all possible. So we've got to find a solution that's available to all of you without requiring you to go out and purchase or invest some money in giving yourself a means of authenticating to our services. So things like SMS, that requires you to have your own phone and your own number. In some cases, they're provided by the college, but that's not ubiquitous, not nearly. So that's out. Email requires you to have a personal email account. It can't be a college email account because that's sort of a chicken and egg scenario where you can't receive an email to something you don't have access to yet. So it has to be a college email, or sorry, a personal email account. And that requires some sort of personal investment. So that's out too. Biometric, we would love to have you have access to biometrics. We would love it, except it's not, again, very ubiquitous in all of our laptops. Very few, a very low percentage of them actually offer what Microsoft calls Windows Hello, which could be fingerprint or face. And retrofitting devices is kind of, it's cost prohibitive at this point. I know in the future this may become an option, but right now it's kind of out for us because we don't have it all throughout the organization where everyone has access to it. So for now, biometrics are not an option for us, but we'd love to make it an option for you in the future. Authenticator, again, same sort of contingencies as SMS. So you need to have a phone for it to reside on. And for that, you need a personal device. And so same limitations of SMS and having a personal phone in some way make it an option that's not available to us. Finally, we have security keys. It's the only column in green here. So security keys are cost effective in the way that they don't cost nearly as much as implementing biometrics, and not even close to the money we would spend on buying phones for everybody. So it is a very cost-effective solution that we can distribute organizational wide. And then an added benefit of it is that it's durable enough to withstand the wear and tear over time. So we're not replacing these things every couple months or every few months. Not to say we'll never replace one, but I know that I've been using a security key for some time now, and it's gone through its fair share of bumps and scratches, and it's still performing quite well. So security key in this availability section of our goal is pretty much the only option for us, and it kind of makes our decision for us. Which brings us to our next slide, where we kind of give an overview of everything we've covered so far. So SMS and email, all of those sections are orange or red, so we can kind of just forget about them. We're not even looking at them. Biometrics, although security, they're spot on. Convenience, they're way on top. Availability, you can't implement it because it's just not ubiquitous enough. Same thing goes for Authenticator. Security's up there. Convenience is kind of there. But again, availability requires the use of a device, a personal device in most cases. So it's also out for us. We might have to come back to it if we can, but it's kind of not our first choice. Security keys, although convenience is in the yellow there, availability is what really sells us on this point here as well. It's secure, so it's going to keep us and your account secure for a long time into the future. So looking at convenience, trying to find a way to accommodate that. That's sort of maybe what we'll go with. And then we'll go down the security key line. And as mentioned, availability is a driving factor here. And then also that leaves us with security keys, our solution with some added accommodations. So although it's not as convenient, we're going to implement something. So combining security keys with something called passwordless authentication is sort of our answer to that. So with some of these other methods, I know with Authenticator, you do have the option to not enter a password, but with SMS email, you are required. So what we're going to do is implement at the same time as MFA, the option for passwordless, which just requires you to insert the security key, enter a PIN, and then have some sort of physical interaction with it. After all of this is said and done, there is a caveat that we have to mention. I have to bring this up. Currently, we cannot use security keys natively on mobile devices, which is something that we were very sad to come across. But they're saying that support is coming in the future. So the one point I'd like to make is if you'd like to access college services on a mobile device, a personal mobile device, we will require that you download and use the Microsoft Authenticator in those specific situations. So if you're deciding to access college services on a mobile device, you're already going through that whole barrage of college policies anyway that your phone has to meet. So one added one now is just an app, the Microsoft Authenticator, in order for you to now access those services on your mobile device. So we hope that will work for the majority of our staff, if not all of it. That would be great. 100% staff, that would be great. All right. I'll hand it off to Cory, and he can kind of talk about the actual use of security key, and then specifically around passwordless authentication.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Okay, so passwordless authentication is basically just an ability to interact with the security service without actually entering your password. It just knows who you are by some other method, usually by a hardware token and a touch or a PIN or something along those lines. Go to the next slide. I will start.
For sure. I just want to see if I can do
change slides. No, I can't. It's on your end.
I can grant you control right here.
There we go.
Oh, but I have to open up system preferences. Okay. This probably would require me to close, so I'll just click it for now. But
Okay.
for the presentation, I'll pass it off to you.
Okay. So for passwordless authentication to work with, primarily what we're using this for is Microsoft services. So Microsoft is one of the services that requires a PIN. So it's almost like think of it as a secondary password, but it's unique only to this authentication method. So no one's going to discover it, or no one's going to guess it out in the real world. So it's a more secure method than a password. And to set this, what are we talking about here? I haven't looked at this in detail. Sorry, just give me a second. This is not me talking.
So I guess the way I lay this out is you can either set the PIN using the Windows app, or you could set the PIN while you're associating it with your Microsoft account. There's sort of two ways you can do it. Yeah. So that's why it's asterisked there. So I can asterisk the top part too. Maybe that's what I'll do.
Yeah, so basically I'm just saying during this is that you need to set up a PIN. There's many ways to do it. The best way to do it is through your account in your Microsoft account. You can add a security method through there and set your PIN there. You can manage it. If you have to reset it, it's all there. It's also going to set that up when you first associate your key with your account. And there's other methods if you lose it or need to reset it. There's tools as well to reset your PIN. You'll never be totally locked out. Worst case scenario, you have to contact IT to kind of walk you through getting it reset. It's pretty straightforward.
Next slide.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. This is just a graphical representation.
This just shows you a typical method or typical process of setting up your token device. I forget what they call these stupid things. Your multi-factor authentication token. What do we call this thing?
I just call it
on something.
I just call it a security key. They call it a security key.
So. Okay. How to set up your security key? Oh yeah, it's right there. Just read the heading.
I think this is actually logging. This is logging in with it. Yeah. So this is the actual login.
It's after set up
versus the set. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So after you've set it up, this is the typical process that you'll go through. You'll hit the portal to log in. Under number 1 there, that'll look fairly familiar. You put in your password. Oh, you sign in.
So basically, in that case, I clicked
password. Let's just go other ways, right?
Other ways, right?
Yeah. So if you don't want to use your password, you can still use your password. If you choose not to, and just want to use your security key, hit other ways to sign in. It's the forgot my password. Then there's another blue text there that says other ways to sign in. From there, it's going to present the options that it knows are associated with your account. One that we're working on today is the security key option. So that's the first option there, Windows Hello, our security key. You'll select that, and then from there, it's going to go and look for your security key in one of your USB ports. If it finds it, it's going to say, yeah, I found it. As you can see there, it shows that it's published by Google. In this case, it might be published by, oh, I guess it depends which browser you're in. That's publishing it. So you're coming from Chrome, it should say coming from Chrome, published by Google. What does it say when you're on Edge browser? I haven't actually looked at that.
My assumption is Edge published by Microsoft, and then Firefox is like Firefox published by Mozilla or something similar to that.
Maybe I'll avoid that. This is going to cause confusion. I'll just say.
Yeah.
Just making sure it's you. So at that point, it's going to ask you to tap the little gold key symbol on the key itself. So once you tap that, it's going to say, yeah, I've registered the tap. Now please put in your PIN number. Once you've done that and the PIN number matches what's saved in your account for that key, it's going to authenticate you and put you on your merry way to your Microsoft services. There, you're logged in.
Yeah, and then the two notes I make there, so the two green circles, those two disappear once you've actually checked off one of those the first time. So the next time you go to log in, it's not going to even prompt you for your password. It's not even going to prompt you for the way that you want to sign in. It's going to take you to step 3 immediately. And then if you're, if you already got your key inserted, it's actually going to skip step 3 and push you right to step 4. It's just going to ask you for your PIN and then asks you to touch it. So if you want to just touch on that during that time, I know it's not clear with my diagrams, but yeah, that just drives home how convenient this is.
I think what I'll say is if it's on a new device, you're gonna have to go through this entire process the first time. After that, it caches the first 2 steps. And as you use that device more and more, you'll actually skip step 3 as well and just go straight to step 4. Every time you go to a new device, you're probably going to have to do all 5 steps.
Right. Yeah. And in usual, and I think like usually in our organizations, you're either using a laptop that's yours over and over, a desktop that's yours over and over again, or you're in a classroom. And in a classroom, usually you're coming into that classroom more and more every week. So the first time you do it at the beginning of the semester, it should remember it. So I can't even remember if it's tied to your if it's tied to your profile or not. I haven't even explored that, but we'll just go safe and say it may do it on a new machine. So
you may be presented 1 to 5, but as you use it more, you should be bugged less and less. Is kind of the
exactly. Yeah, and I think that will really drive home what passwordless is. And I think the other thing to note, I don't know if I mentioned it in here, but the PIN is basically, it's a password that doesn't really have to abide by password requirements because it's on a secure device. So like changing it all the time isn't required. And some of the case and complexity requirements aren't there either, just because it's on a separate and secure device. So, okay, next slide.
Like a bank PIN, it's not a 4-digit code. It can be anything you want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it can't. It's not just numbers.
That's like my bank card. That's a 4-digit code.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a 4-digit code, but it can be anything you want. It can be numbers, letters.
Whatever.
It's not just Is it just numbers? No, it can be anything, right?
It can be anything. Yeah. So you could go. You could be like, Cory is the best or something as your PIN if you wanted to. All right, you want to take this one too?
Sure.
Okay. So the what ifs. And I mean, all these questions are all burning in their heads at this time. It's like, what if I lose it? What if I forget my PIN? You know, all these things are happening. So we have the what if section for that. So
like any technology, things can happen.
All right.
So what if someone figures out my password? Well, if they do figure out your password, they're going to hit a brick wall because with this implemented, they will not, you'll get a notification that someone's actually trying to authenticate on your account. You'll get the prompt that someone needs to. So don't, when that happens and you haven't requested a login, don't just press the key. I've actually tested that. Someone tries to hack. If they got that far and you actually authenticated them, they would get in. They not.
It's possible. Okay, so I do have some questions built in here, some scenario questions.
There's no, Microsoft's not and Google aren't smart enough to know like geolocation or anything kind of weird IP.
Oh, they know. Yeah, Google always emails me, even if it knows it's me. It says you just had a login attempt from X. I'm like, yeah, that was me. Like, but okay, so I have some what ifs in here.
I'm not sure what you were thinking here, to be honest. They still need physical access. So as long as this is set up correctly and it's been working, you're pretty much protected. The fact that you're getting prompted is a good indicator that you just need to go and change your password. Once you've done that, problem's pretty much solved at that point. And we can pretty well guarantee that that person has not gained access to any sensitive information that belongs to you. And that is the beauty of this entire process, multi-factor. That second factor that we've implemented has protected you from someone guessing your password. The only thing we have to do is just reset your password and we're good to go.
Right.
Anything else?
What if I lose my
Lost
security key?
my security key. So we can actually clear that key from your account. So basically it's now disassociated with your account. So even if someone uses it and tries to get in, it has nowhere to go. So it'll still have all of those pieces of information on it, but the fact that it's disassociated from your account, it has no value anymore. So, and it's encrypted on the device, so they're not going to get any real information off of it. They just have a key that's got someone else's credentials on it, but they can't use it for anything. So,
Right. Yeah.
It's a lost device that has now been rendered entirely useless because we disassociated it from your account.
Yeah, and they have only 8 attempts to try to decrypt that information too. So unless they figure out your PIN in those 8 attempts, they're not going to be able to actually access any of that stuff. So they still, I think, I don't know if they actually access they might be able to see your username. I haven't confirmed that, but if they figure out your PIN and they find your account, that means they found your username. But by the time they actually go, as long as you're contacting IT in enough time, they're going to try and use that key to log in because they know your username and they know the PIN on the key now. And they go to log in, that key is no longer associated with your account, therefore it's not going to accept it. So it's already rendered useless to them. So they have to go out and try and find you as a person again.
Yep.
And get your key. So it's quite a tough life for these guys now with these keys in place. So
they would have to be even an insider that knew you personally, that they would still have to guess your PIN number. Like it's the likelihood of them getting in within those 8 guesses is pretty minimal, if almost zero. Yeah.
All right.
It's literally zero for us from a security perspective.
Just don't go screaming your PIN. It's like, my PIN's always I love cats or something. Just don't go do that, okay? Or don't write the PIN on the
Don't put your security key in your wallet and then a sticky note with your PIN number on it and then lose your wallet.
Please don't. Just choose something memorable to you. That not, choose something. Just use your best judgment there. All right. Last one here.
So if you forget your PIN, there's the quickest ways to contact your IT department. They can go into your account and create a one-time password to reset your PIN, and it'll walk you right through the process, and you can get back in and reset your PIN, and it'll update your security key, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and the details on this procedure are listed in the documentation or that link that we provided in the email. So just take a look at that. Contact your IT in the way that you normally would. Chances are you're not going to be able to email them, so probably phone them, and then they can walk through the process. Probably ensure that you are who you say you are first, and then get your temporary access to get that key reassociated after you reset it. And after that's reassociation's done, then you'll be good to go again.
Yeah, we're leaving wiping to just IT only, correct?
They can wipe it they can wipe it themselves. The utility is actually in Windows, so
I don't think they need to know that yet, do they?
I show it in the video. So
I guess it's in there. Yeah, that's the last resort. Yeah, failing everything and you still can't use your token, you can always wipe it and start over.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I think we're on the last section then. Okay, so then the burning question, I'm sure is in all of your minds right now, is when do we get access to this awesome stuff? And the answer is early to mid-November. We're going to try our hardest here. We might not meet that timeline, but we're going to try our hardest. We're going to try and get these security keys, and they kind of look like, does this work with the cropping? Yeah, it does. It kind of looks like this. We're going to try and get you all security keys across both organizations from early to mid-November. So easiest way is to visit a campus physically. We're going to send out a bunch of keys to all of those campuses, and they'll be available to you. There's not any specific key to any specific person. They're all blank, so there's no one key better than the other. So just go and take a key, and then we'll follow the procedures for associating it, and those are listed in the documentation as well. But along with the documentation, mid-November to mid-December, we're going to have multiple scheduled walkthroughs, and this might just be done. Cumberland will do theirs and Parkland will do theirs, but we can do a joint one as well, where we walk people through actually associating their keys in real time. So if you're finding that you're having difficulty or something's not making sense, we'll have a couple sessions during the mid-November to mid-December time period to walk through those people that are having some difficulties. I should also back up a little bit and say that if you're not able to physically visit a campus in a reasonable amount of time, we'll probably make arrangements to mail it out to a physical address. So we'll send out a follow-up email just asking for that information for people who don't have any plans on visiting a campus within the next month or so. And then activate MFA for your account. So this kind of happens in tandem in that mid-November to mid-December time period. So during that time, people are activating their accounts for MFA, and then we'll provide a means of you tell us that you've actually done that. So there'll be a procedure that we'll ask you to go through to ensure that, okay, it's been successfully authenticated or associated, but can you actually authenticate against it? Because we don't want you to lock yourself out inadvertently. So once we've confirmed that, we'll record you as done or completed, or you go and do it yourself, and then we'll turn on stricter authentication rules for you to ensure that you're only authenticating for those with those specific devices. So this would be a security key and Microsoft Authenticator, and we'll rule out email and text message and enforce MFA for most services. And then in January 2022, we're going to check in with those people who haven't responded yet to ensure that you maybe just didn't miss telling us, or in seeing that you maybe have difficulties, and then we'll just kind of get those hopefully few number of people that haven't quite got it associated yet, get those done, cleaned up, and then we'll incorporate, and we'll probably do this along the way as well, but we're just going to officially do it in January 2022. We'll start incorporating it into the onboarding process where new employees will by default get a security key, and then we'll go through the process of associating that right within that orientation period to ensure that you're MFA right from the beginning. And then of course, guides on the process is at that link below. It's not the prettiest thing. It's good up until that last dash there. But this link will probably be posted on both Cumberland and Parkland's pages in some manner for you to access. So look forward in your common areas to access those guides easier. So, all right. So those are
I want to add for Cumberland staff, specifically a lot of our executives that have already been using MFA for the last half year or so. A lot of you are using SMS and email for your authentications. So as we implement this for those people, when we do verify that it's working for you with your key, we will be deactivating the SMS and email options on those accounts, just to kind of slowly scale those lesser secure options out of the process. We'll leave them in place for now until we have verified that you're actually able to use your tokens or your security keys. And once that's been verified, we will scale that back so that using our services the most secure fashion we can.
Right. Yeah, good point, Cory. All right. So now that we're done, well, we're done. It's now your turn. Ask us any questions that you may have, and then of course, provide any feedback you want as well. We're open to getting some feedback. Just let us know. And this is usually the point in the presentation where it'll be quiet for a long time, and then one person will speak up, and then the barrage comes, or that triggers everyone else to start asking questions. So at this point, it might be chatted or whatever. But
if you weren't sure the physical nature of these things, it just requires a single USB port, like a standard USB port. Depending on what device you have assigned to you, you may get one with a different kind, but the large majority of you will be getting a standard, what's called a Type A USB port.
Yeah, well, I've got, they're still in my packs, but I didn't get little envelopes. It's all shrink wrapped like this.
Oh, yeah, mine
Yeah,
are, the blue ones are all an individual
yeah,
green little
yeah. I never got
stacks.
that. I must have ordered too many or something because I only
Okay. Got the
got the
bulk
shrink pack of all of them.
one.
Oh well.
You got the bulk
Um,
discount. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I got the same discount as you. Just more of them. Well, I could just throw this one up. I just got the one on my keychain. There we go. I've been using that one for a while. Okay, so that was good. That was a good run through. I think we'll do two, and then I'll do the last one. And then the one thing I'll do is I'll probably hand off control,
Start that.
keyboard and mouse control versus me clicking through. The one thing I did miss was at the end of what I'll probably do is at the is this it? No. So at this point, probably here, I would do the third one, which will just, once we talk about Authenticator not really being, I'll probably pop this poll in to see, do you access call services via personal mobile device? That's I think the only thing I missed there. So
There's quite a few. I know at Cumberland there is quite a few. I imagine it's the same at your organization.
yeah, and it's a personal choice,
Yeah.
and usually they're like, oh, I have to accept this policy on my
Yeah.
device now. It's like, yeah, and usually we don't hear about
Yeah.
it for the most part, but some people say, oh, I have to do this. You have control of my phone now. It's like, no, well, kinda, but no. Just to business apps. But yeah, that over time they've come to be good with that too. So. And it looks like the YouTube stream's still going. That's good. That's what I like to see. So I don't know how many people will tune in via YouTube. They have the ability to chat in via YouTube as well. So I'll monitor that, and there'll be a Q&A panel in Slido as well that they can use. So
Okay.
I'll just monitor both of those. And you can add Slido to Teams if you want. You can add it to that meeting if you want to use polling. If not, we can just leave it out.
Okay, so that's been running 51 minutes, it says. So that's about time. So that's perfect.
Yeah, 52 minutes. And we did some discussion, and you know what? It always goes faster because they're always talking faster.
Yeah.
Some unless people interject, then it can, kind of even out. But for the most part, I usually don't set a schedule, but somehow I always seem to get very close. Unfortunately, it's usually over, but it's close anyway.
Yeah. Before I forget, I want to just touch on the personal device. Do we want to put the fear of God kind of message into personal device use that management wants us to from an HR perspective? That we prefer that they don't, just because there's a line there that crosses where personal information versus work information shouldn't commingle. And because technically we're supposed to wipe those devices when they leave. Legally, we're allowed to, I think, or not. I don't know. There's a bunch of legal repercussions around personal device use when it's self-declared. Like we haven't okayed anything. We just said, well, if you want to use it, go ahead. You just have to sign in, basically. We haven't gone through a formal onboarding process of that device, other than there's a policy that has to get applied to that device, but that's about it. Like when someone leaves the college and they have a device that's personal, and we're not do you verify that all the data is off that device?
When they offboard, I guess some stuff sits in Google land and some stuff sits in Meraki system manager land.
Yeah.
So when we go and remove management from that device, it'll actually I think it removes all of the college data from. So if they're using an email app, if they're using the Gmail app, it's cleaner. But if they're using an email app that's not like a third-party app, that data, it expires after a period of time. So personal, it's not like a complete wipe. Definitely
No,
not.
no, I know it's not.
But
Especially if they've copied and pasted any content out, and there's no, like, say if they're not using a Samsung device with Knox that separates the data. When they leave and they've say downloaded a bunch of stuff and just into the operating system download location on Android, wiping it does nothing to that data that sits there. That kind of thing keeps me up at night. because I know it exists because I know some people have the exact same phone I have, for example, but I know for sure they're not using Knox because I don't see an Android for Work profile in any of their profiles anywhere, and I don't see a registered device under their name. So they're using Samsung's mail app, obviously, or something along those lines, and not Outlook or for Android or something along those lines. And we don't have a policy to enforce use of when thou art using your phone, thou must use Outlook for whatever. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah. If it's a Gmail app, that mail stales and then it disappears from the
Okay.
app itself.
Yeah.
So, but it stales and then it's gone.
Oh,
So they no longer have access to it, and eventually over time it disappears. And then, but that leaves their personal. If they have multiple accounts in there, it keeps it intact. But if they decide to use a third-party app, I don't think we allow for POP email. It's just IMAP, which is
yeah.
sort of live.
Yeah.
So again, access is lost, and then eventually it stales out. So that's the best effort.
Yeah.
It's not wiping. It's not as good as wiping, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But
I just need to do some testing. I should just create a test account and get a test phone and just run through it. If I disable that account, what actually happens to that data after a while on that device? Does it just become inaccessible? I'm assuming it
yeah,
does, but I don't know for sure. I'd have to actually dig a little deeper. And that's
right.
depending on
Yeah,
the version of Android or whatever they're running and iOS. And iOS is a little better, I think, in that regard. Although,
I think as Android's better at separating the data
yeah,
for
especially with the
sure.
Knox,
iOS
like
it
Knox is really
intermingles.
good at
Yeah,
separating. I'm
yeah.
assuming that's not even Knox anymore. That's just Android native that work
I think
personal.
it's still I think it's still Knox. They still have their own. So
I think it's Knox because when you go into the work profile, it says powered by Knox, if I remember
yeah,
correctly now.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Knox is still ubiquitous enough to have its own,
Yeah, when I go into
designation.
work, it's
So,
powered by Knox, it says in the bottom corner. Yeah, yeah. Which
okay,
is
so
cool.
that's
Because then if you do wipe the device, it's only wiping the work profile. So you can actually, when they leaves, actually go click on that device and click wipe. And it's just going to wipe that profile. And you can guarantee that it's done pretty much.
yeah,
And I like that. That's good. But everything else is like, I don't know.